Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if ancient Egypt survived. It will be impossible and a far stretch to say that ancient Egypt would survive until nowadays. But in this alternate history, I attempt to prolong the existence of ancient Egypt as far as possible. Let's also not forget that many details of the past they are unclear, don't exist anymore, and that sources are very sparse to come by, and even if we find them, they need to be questioned. However, the good point is that geography rarely or just slowly changes, and moreover, we also have a long record of Egypt and its rulers, which can give us some inspiration. Moreover, many temples, monuments, and of course the pyramids still exist until today, which in itself is really amazing if we compare it to other civilizations. Coptic is also a relic of that time, and it somehow survived until nowadays, the ancient language of the Egyptians. Overall, we can claim that a lot of things of ancient Egypt survived, but not the state itself. Let's also not forget the fact that the survival of ancient Egypt could have been even shorter if the sea peoples were successful. Remember, ancient Egypt was a country that could defend itself against the sea peoples. Sure, there was a decline and Egypt never came back or never rebounded, but that the Egyptians were able to beat the sea peoples is already a miracle compared to the Hittite Empire, for instance, or the Minoans. Ancient Egypt finally fell to the expansionist Achaemenid Empire, or Persia. The Achaemenid Empire was one of the greatest empires known to mankind. The unfortunate situation of ancient Egypt was that Amasis II just shortly died before the Persian invasion of Egypt in 526 BCE, and that key Egyptian allies defected to the Persians. But a more personal conflict between the Persians and the Egyptians also played a role, and I will explain this in greater detail. And in this new timeline which I will propose, things will definitely be different. So, what if all of that changed? What if ancient Egypt survived? The best point of divergence we could take is that Amasis II would survive long enough to lead the counteroffensive against the Persians. Another point of divergence is that Amasis II would agree to send his daughter as a concubine to Cambyses II, and he would not send the daughter of Apis, the one who used to be the pharaoh and who was deposed. In OTL, he sent Nitetis, who was the daughter of Apis, to Cambyses II, the Persian emperor, and who told him why she was sent, and she also revealed her origins, which angered Cambyses II, and he swore to take revenge against Amasis II. Remember that in those times, this was something really that you shouldn't do, and it's normal that in those times, well, a ruler would become very mad and take it as a personal insult. Let's just go with the second point of divergence, that of Amasis sending his daughter to Cambyses II. In OTL, Amasis II was compliant enough to send an ophthalmologist to Cambyses II, and in this timeline he would send his daughter as well, and she would then become a concubine to Cambyses II. The Persian emperor would make other demands later on as well, but we don't know which ones it could be and whether he would even make demands or not. Amasis II would die as in OTL, and his son Psamtik III would succeed. This time around, without Cambyses II wanting revenge for being tricked by Psamtik's father. Psamtik III would not be faced with a Persian invasion. He would continue the policies of his father and cultivate good diplomatic relations with the Greek city-states. Moreover, he would also have the objective to gain influence over Cyprus once more, as it was an interesting market for Egyptian merchants and manufacturers. In OTL, Cambyses II wasn't an invincible ruler. He had some failures. Two of them were the invasion of Ammon and Ethiopia. I assume that instead of invading Ammon and Ethiopia, he may try to invade other places, but failed to do so as well. In 522 BCE, he died, and his successor Bardia also died very shortly. There were revolts in Persia, and I think that Psamtik III could use this as the moment not only to consolidate his power but to expand even beyond. Cyprus may be taken. Cyrene and Libya would fall once more under Egyptian influence, and places beyond the Sinai Peninsula would be eyed by Psamtik III. Alliances with Greeks would be made once more after they turned their backs for some time, and Egypt would be in a very good spot. Darius III would ascend to the throne, and he would try to invade Egypt for multiple reasons. First of all, he wanted to expand the borders of his empire. Second of all, he wanted to take back certain parts that were already under the influence of the Achaemenid Empire. And thirdly, Psamtik III grew a bit too powerful, and Cyrus didn't want to have concurrence from anyone. This time, however, his armies were met with heavy resistance. Not only that, but Psamtik III was able to get a lot of mercenaries, had collected some allies here and there, and let's not forget that without the plundering of Egypt in 525 BCE, the Persians would have less money which they could allocate for a better army or better salaries. With that said, the Persians would be defeated, and it is likely that Darius the Great would have again some rebellions here and there to deal with, while the Egyptian pharaoh may expand his rule up until Syria. Psamtik III would effectively be able to remodel Egypt back into the shape of the new kingdom. Egypt was once more a great power. After the death of Psamtik III, his successor would be left with a strong, powerful Egypt, but faced constant threats from the Persians, which could be dealt with. The Persians would eventually collapse, and much of Greek history would be altered by this point. Babylonia may be able to free itself eventually and could become an Egyptian ally for some time, while a new rival would rise in Asia Minor, a Neo-Lydian empire which would seek to dominate ancient Greece and Anatolia. Egypt at this point would not like to venture further beyond and would most likely keep Syria and Cyprus while campaigning against Nubia, Libya, Cyrene and Ethiopia. It's not impossible for Egypt to expand even until parts of Yemen, or at least have a few port cities under their control, something that anyway happened like 500-600 years ago. The Greek city-states would call Egypt for help, not against the Persians but against Lydia, and would get some support from Egypt. They would get ships also built from the Phoenicians, who were now under the control of Egypt, financial aid and perhaps even some soldiers to deal with Lydia, and at the end the Lydians would collapse as well. Egypt would also focus a bit on modern-day Yemen in order to get the very important frankincense, or the olibanum. This product was very popular all over the Middle East, and cutting out the Sabaeans as middlemen would be something Egypt might consider doing. In the next years, Egypt would see a decline and have frequent wars with Carthage. A Carthaginian dynasty could even arise in Egypt, while Neo-Babylonia or Neo-Assyria would consolidate their power in the Middle East. The Greeks, without the Achaemenid Empire, would be united under Macedon due to the rise of an Alexander-like figure. He could even expand until the Middle East, have naval battles against Carthage, ally perhaps even Egypt, and the successors of him would fight off the Celts and the Illyrians in the Balkans. I believe that the Middle East wouldn't pose a big threat to Egypt, because empires would come and go, be it from Mesopotamia or again some new Persian empire, while Macedon would be busy with the Balkans, Greece and Asia Minor to fend off Celtic invasions or Illyrians or other types of invasions, but Carthage would be the biggest rival to Egypt, and this for hundreds of years to come. With the rise of Rome, not only would the Romans find an important ally with Egypt, but the invasions against Carthage, they could even be more successful, and Carthage would disappear much quicker from the political scene. Egypt would regain more control in the Mediterranean, while Rome would expand as Inotial and eventually fight off Macedon. Egypt in the meantime would regain control in their southern borders, and with that cleared, they would again try to expand into Syria and Cyprus. Egypt had changed over time, and wasn't just a memory but a living fossil. Rome may even take more inspiration from the Egyptians and Egyptian culture, philosophy and religion. It could become as important to the world as Greek culture, for instance, of philosophy and religion. Whole concepts would be different thanks to this longer existence of Egypt. And Egypt would be one of the centers of the world, after which many countries would try to remodel themselves. With the expansion of Rome and Egypt, well, at some point, both empires would overlap, and only one of them could survive. Instead of the Punic Wars, the Roman-Egyptian Wars would be remembered as great battles of antiquity. Who would win? And that's where we leave it for now. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.